On March 7, 2026, The Washington Post, NBC News, CNN, and CBS News all published the same confirmation. Multiple U.S. officials with direct knowledge told all four outlets simultaneously. Russia is actively providing Iran with the exact locations of American warships, aircraft, and military bases across the Gulf region. Not political support, not diplomatic cover. Actual targeting data, live, precise, and flowing into Tehran as Iranian drones lift off their launch pads. One U.S. official described the scale of the effort to the Washington Post in 2 words: pretty comprehensive. That phrase, pretty comprehensive, is the kind of language intelligence officials choose carefully when they know what they are saying will be on the record in front of the entire world. What it describes, when you strip away the careful wording, is a nuclear-armed major power actively helping a country at war target American military personnel in the field. 6 American soldiers are already dead. They were killed on March 1st at Port Shuaiba in Kuwait, a makeshift command center where U.S. personnel had relocated specifically because smaller, dispersed locations would be harder for Iran to find. According to CBS News and the Washington Post, the drone hit dead center on the roof. No sirens, no intercept. The concrete barrier walls surrounding the building were designed for car bombs from the Iraq era against a drone descending vertically from above. They meant nothing. As analysts, cited by multiple outlets this week, point to the precision of the strike as consistent with the kind of targeting data Russia has refined over 4 years of active operations in Ukraine. That conclusion is analytical. The direct link between Russian intelligence and this specific strike has not been officially confirmed. But the pattern it fits is one that named experts have documented clearly. Karl Grajewski at Harvard's Belfour Center told reporters this week that Iran's strikes show a sophistication that goes beyond what Tehran can generate alone. Iran has only a handful of military satellites and no full surveillance constellation of its own, a serious limitation when tracking dozens of American assets across 5 countries simultaneously. Russia, on the other hand, has spent 4 years in Ukraine refining one of the most battle-tested targeting systems on the planet: satellites, signals intelligence, and real-time damage assessment. All of it is now being shared with Tehran, according to those 3 U.S. officials who spoke to the Washington Post. Dara Massakat at the Carnegie Endowment was more specific. Cute pointed directly at what Iran has been hitting throughout this week of strikes. Iran is making very precise hits on early warning radars and over-the-horizon communication systems. Her conclusion: they're going after command and control. Command and control infrastructure is not just buildings. It is the nervous system connecting every American base, ship, and aircraft across the Gulf into a single, coherent, operational picture. Radar systems give air defense batteries the seconds needed to track and engage incoming threats. Satellite communication domes link forward forces back to CENTCOM in Qatar and to Washington. Destroy those systems, and you do not just damage hardware, you fragment the American military's ability to see, communicate, and respond as one unified force across the entire theater. At Camp Arifjan in Kuwait, the main U.S. logistics hub in the Gulf, satellite imagery shows at least 6 satellite communication domes destroyed in a single, deliberate strike sequence, clustered precisely on the communication nodes, targeting geometry that implies knowing exactly what to hit before a single drone ever launched. At Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan, satellite imagery from March 7th confirmed the NTPY-2 radar for an American TOT battery was struck and apparently destroyed over 500 miles from Iran. THAAD is the Terminal High-Altitude Area Defense System, the U.S. military's most capable ballistic missile interceptor. The NTPY-2 radar is what makes it function. Without that radar, the entire battery cannot engage incoming threats at altitude, regardless of how many interceptor missiles remain loaded and ready to fire. The United States operates 8 THAAD batteries globally. Losing radar capability on even a fraction of that network is not a minor operational setback. It is a deliberate, targeted degradation of the most capable missile defense architecture America has ever deployed in this region, accomplished within the first 72 hours of the conflict. In the UAE, CNN analysis confirmed buildings housing radar systems for 2 additional DOD installations were also struck, with visible damage to the sheds that store the radar equipment. Map the full target list from this week: DOD radars, communication domes, command centers, CIA station at the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, and a precise, deliberate logic emerges from the pattern. This is not improvised retaliation fired in anger after the opening strikes. It is a methodical campaign to blind and isolate American forces across the entire Gulf theater, and that is structurally different from every previous Iranian military operation. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was asked directly this week about Russian intelligence flowing to Iran. His answer was 3 words: not really a factor. That answer landed on the same day the Washington Post confirmed 3 U.S. officials describing Russia's effort as a pretty comprehensive undertaking. One of those 2 statements is consistent with satellite imagery, battle damage reports, and what multiple named analysts have documented this week. The other came from the Secretary of Defense. That gap is worth noting. To understand why this is happening now, you have to understand that this is not a relationship that started on February 28, 2026. It was built across 4 years of war in Ukraine, transaction by transaction. In the summer of 2022, Iran began supplying Russia with Shahed 136 drones, propeller-driven, capable of striking targets up to 2,000 kilometers away. Russia was burning through its precision strike inventory faster than its domestic factories could replace, under wartime pressure. By early 2023, the 2 countries signed a $1.75 billion deal for domestic production on Russian soil, drones built on Iranian technology inside a new factory at Alabuga in Tatarstan. Ukraine's defense intelligence confirmed that factory hit its contracted target of 6,000 drones, a full year ahead of schedule. By mid-2025, Alabuga was producing over 5,500 units per month. Iran transferred not just hardware, but the full production architecture, the engineering knowledge, supply chain design, the manufacturing process. That is not a standard arms sale. It is the kind of technology transfer most governments reserve for their most trusted partners over decades. In return, Moscow supplied Tehran with capabilities Iran had been trying to acquire for years without success through any other channel. In 2024, Russia delivered at least 1 squadron of Yak-130 combat aircraft to Iran, confirmed by the Wall Street Journal and United 24 Media. A contract for 48 Su-35 multi-role fighter jets was formalized, with deliveries planned across 2026 to 2028. Jets Iran had been requesting from Russia for over a decade. In January 2026, 6 weeks before this war started, Russia began delivering Mi-28 attack helicopters to Iran. A meaningful upgrade over Iran's aging American-supplied Cobras in service since before the 1979 revolution, days before the opening strikes. Moscow signed a €495 million deal to supply Iran with Verba man-portable air defense systems, the most advanced shoulder-fired anti-aircraft platform in Russian mass production, per the Financial Times. In January 2025, both countries signed a 20-year comprehensive strategic partnership treaty covering all spheres of cooperation, including defense, per the Financial Times. This is not a casual alliance of isolated countries propping each other up. It is a structured exchange that ran continuously since 2022 and accelerated sharply in the months immediately before this conflict began. Now, let's map the economic dimension, because this is where Russia's benefit from this war becomes precise and measurable. Russia's 2026 federal budget was built on an assumed Urals crude price of around $59 per barrel. In late 2025, Urals prices were frequently falling below that level, squeezing the Kremlin's ability to fund military operations in Ukraine without drawing down financial reserves faster than planned. Since the strikes began on February 28th, Brent crude jumped to approximately $84 per barrel, its highest level in over a year. Russia's Urals blend climbed above $70 per barrel, according to the Foreign Policy Research Institute analysis published this week. That gap between the budget assumption and the actual market price is the difference between a war economy under financial stress and one with operational room to sustain its campaign in Ukraine indefinitely. According to FPRI, elevated oil revenue directly reduces Moscow's incentives to consider a ceasefire and makes it easier to continue operations in Ukraine. Qatar Energy halted operations at the Ras Laffan industrial complex after Iranian drone strikes, confirmed by Bloomberg, reporting from March 5th. Ras Laffan is the facility through which roughly 1/5 of all globally traded liquefied natural gas flows, according to Al Jazeera's energy coverage this week. European LNG prices surged by as much as 50% on Monday alone, after Qatar Energy confirmed the halt. South Korea announced it could run out of liquefied natural gas in 9 days, according to Al Jazeera coverage published on March 6th. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung announced a 100 trillion won stabilization fund, approximately $68 billion, to cope with soaring energy costs. Goldman Sachs, cited by Al Jazeera on March 7th, estimated global oil prices will likely hit $100 per barrel if shipping stays at current reduced levels for 5 weeks. Qatar's energy minister, Saad Al-Kaabi, warned in a Financial Times interview on March 6 that producers could halt output within days and oil could reach $150 per barrel. Russia's oil exports do not transit the Strait of Hormuz. Russian crude moves through Baltic and Black Sea ports and Pacific terminals to Asia. With Hormuz effectively halted, Asian economies urgently seeking alternative supplies found Russia ready. Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak told reporters directly this week. Russian oil is in demand, and Russia will sell it if it is purchased. According to FPRI, early March trading data already shows Russian barrels gaining Asian market share. The same war Russia is helping Iran prosecute more precisely through satellite intelligence is simultaneously creating the market conditions that allow Moscow to sell more oil at higher prices to the same buyers that would otherwise take Gulf crude. This war also consumed Washington's strategic focus at the exact moment. U.S. brokered Ukraine negotiations were approaching a potentially decisive juncture. The third round of trilateral negotiations planned for Abu Dhabi was postponed indefinitely. Iran has been striking Abu Dhabi since March 1st, confirmed by Bloomberg on March 5th. France 24 reported this week that several U.S. diplomats leading the Ukraine talks were the same officials who had been conducting the Iran nuclear negotiations that collapsed before Operation Epic Fury. Those officials are now managing an active conflict across 7 countries. According to Chatham House, the Kremlin will calibrate its next moves to preserve bargaining space with Washington on Ukraine, while extracting maximum benefit from U.S. distraction in the Gulf. According to FPRI, Russian overnight missile strikes against Ukrainian cities in February 2026 reached their highest 4-year intensity. The month immediately before the Gulf crisis removed diplomatic pressure entirely. Both conditions are now present simultaneously. More money for Russia's war economy and less American pressure on the negotiating table. That combination does not produce ceasefires. Russia publicly condemned the American strikes on Iran on February 28th. Putin called them cynical. Lavrov offered to mediate. On the same day, Russia launched 106 missiles and drones at Ukrainian cities. Its diplomats were publicly calling for de-escalation in the Middle East. That is not contradiction. It is a policy with multiple objectives running in parallel. And, by every measurable indicator available this week, oil revenues, interceptor consumption, diplomatic bandwidth, and the precision of Iranian strikes on American radar systems, each one of those objectives is already producing results. In my view, the most important analytical point about this entire architecture is its timeline. not built this week, not improvised after February 28th. Constructed across 4 full years of deliberate work. It's concluded with a 20-year strategic partnership formally signed in January 2025, over a year before this war began. That timeline is the clearest evidence this was enabled by design, not improvisation. The surveillance architecture, the weapons transfers, the oil shock, the frozen peace talks, the 6 dead American soldiers at Port Shuaiba. These are not separate stories happening simultaneously in the same region. They are components of a single system assembled over 4 years and activated in a single week in late February 2026. Understanding that system as a whole, rather than each headline in isolation, is what tells you where this story goes from here.